Is Siege's automatic toxic ban system really all that bad? Hey, what's up guys, Irish Turtle here, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about the fairly new, controversial system that Ubisoft have implemented into Rainbow Six Siege. Now, for those of you guys that maybe aren't aware or haven't been playing Siege for the last few months, you may not be aware that Ubisoft have introduced a new system in an attempt to combat the toxic behaviour that has become rife within the Siege community. Now, this toxic behaviour isn't to do with gameplay itself, but is in fact to do with the chat and the chat functionality of PC gaming. So this isn't something that really affects the Xbox and PlayStation players. This is solely really a PC issue, and it was something that Ubisoft decided they'd had enough with and wanted to implement a fix for. Now, the fix itself was a fairly good idea on their behalf. The idea was that they would have an automatic system that would pick up certain words and ban players for a specific amount of time for using those words. The more often they used them, the longer the ban would be, all the way up to a permanent ban. Now, this system has been met with quite a lot of hostility from a large, a portion of the Siege community, with a lot of people saying things like, oh, Ubisoft are turning into social justice warriors, oh, they're not allowing free speech, oh, this, that, the other, it's not a good system. Now, the aim of this video is kind of just to talk about the different sides of the argument, and then I'm going to give my opinion on it overall, and, you know, hopefully I can get a little bit of a debate in the comments going on here for what you guys think, and whether or not you agree with me, or why you necessarily disagree with me. So of course, let's start with the argument against it, because that seems to be one of the popular ones at the moment, and let's go right. So the system itself, as a lot of people have said, is very social justice warrior. It's kind of like people using homophobic, racist, slang terms they shouldn't be using. They should be allowed to use them, is a large majority's opinion. They think, oh, it's not that bad, I should be fine to say these kinds of words. And, you know, I kind of understand that, the idea that you should be allowed to say what you want to say, but also at the end of the day, this isn't something that you own. Ubisoft owns Rainbow Six Siege, they own the rights to it, you simply play their game. So on the other hand, they do have every right to say what you are and are not allowed to put within their game. And at the end of the day, why should someone be subjected to offensive, abusive or hurtful comments just because you've decided that's what you want to do? And again, the system itself is not 100%, there are flaws with it. In certain countries, certain words that you might use, you know, do come across as racist. For example, the word black, in certain other cultures, the way that the word for black is racist in some cultures, at least how it sounds, but it's not racist, it's just how they say it. And again, this is sort of an issue with the system. I think there needs to be a localization thing put in where Ubisoft note, okay, in this country, this is a word they say, so players from this country should be somewhat allowed to say that word. But again, I think the system there is kind of like, well, if one person can say it, why can't everyone say it? So it is a bit of a catch-22 there, but I understand some of the ire from players in that area. The other argument is people saying that Ubisoft are just turning into social justice warriors and that they're just defending people's right to be angry, and they're just, you know, they're basically toning their game down because they think that, you know, it's not, they're basically, you know, they think that, oh, all these words are bad, so people shouldn't be allowed to say them. Now again, this kind of brings back to my point of, this is their game, they own the rights to it, they're allowed to dictate what you say. And at the end of the day, Rainbow Six Siege is a shooter. It's a first-person shooter with an objective-based game mode. You don't need chat. You don't need the ability to put things in the chat that are abusive towards your teammates or the other players. It's just not necessary. At no point should you be calling someone an offensive slur or a racial slur just because you think it's funny. Those people shouldn't have to be subjected to that kind of sort of talk just because they're playing a game against you. And now, one of the arguments I saw from a player was that, oh, well, I should be allowed to say this because at the end of the day, you know, this is a game all about communication. And I completely agree with that. But they're not banning the chat system. You know, they've not turned around and gone, oh, you can't use the chat. You just can't use offensive terms. If you watch the Pro League, the high-level rank play, people don't use the chat. They just put things like GG, good game, you know, good luck, have fun. They don't use the chat to put things in that are abusive in there. And again, you see the higher-level players, some people just turn the chat off completely. You don't need it on PC. And that was another argument that I saw. People saying, well, if you don't like abusive chat, you should turn the chat off yourself and just ignore it. But again, why should somebody have to turn the chat off because of a minority of people who want to be abusive? Realistically, we shouldn't be penalising someone because they have to deal with that. We should be penalising the people that put out that abuse, that put out that toxic chat. And, you know, I don't understand why people think this is a social justice warrior kind of thing. You know, I guarantee loads of people are going to be putting in a chat, oh, you're a social justice warrior. Oh, you know, you're just like, you know, you're being offended for these people and you shouldn't be. But that's not the case. I just think it's not right that people have to deal with this. At the end of the day, we deal with racism, we deal with homophobia, we deal with sexism in the real world. So why should people, when they play video games, a way to escape sort of real life, have to deal with these problems in that game as well? You know, it's just not fair to them. There's no point where this should be okay. Now, another argument again that I saw for the case was someone telling me, oh, well, I got banned the other day because I accidentally put in a rude word by accident when I meant to spell something else. I meant to put the word day and I put the word gay, and that got me banned. Now, at the end of the day, that's understandable. You know, people, you know, sometimes do type the wrong thing. There is an accident there, you may slip up. But let's be honest, a half-an-hour ban is not the end of the world for typing. And let's be honest, you don't need to be using the chat. You don't need to be using that anyway. And if you are using it for communication, realistically, half-an-hour ban, it may make you think, hey, look, I'm going to be careful what I type in the future. And if it happens multiple times, more than once, clearly it's not an accident and you're doing it deliberately. And quite frankly, you deserve to be banned if you're doing that. If you're deliberately putting racial slurs, offensive things in the chat, you can't just keep arguing, oh, it was an accident. There is no defense for that. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I agree with Ubisoft's system. And there's all these kind of like different arguments. People are saying things like, oh, well, I put the word nibber in chat because, you know, it's a meme and therefore it's okay. And again, we know what you're trying to put. We know what that meme actually stands for. We know that's a joke way of saying a more racially charged word. And Ubisoft have gone, well, we're not going to allow that because we know that is a word that you're trying to use. And at the end of the day, people are just going to use that to replace another offensive word. And that word will then become offensive. So realistically, Ubisoft have kind of made the right decision, at least in that aspect, where they've gone, no, actually, you're not allowed to say these alternate words because they're just as bad. Now, again, I kind of understand where people are coming from about the right to free speech. People think, you know, because of this, like the laws America has, the right to free speech, I should be allowed to say what I want to say to who I want to. But in reality, that's not how that works. Free speech is not about having the ability to offend anyone you like. You know, everyone has a right to their own freedoms, to their own ability to not have to deal with abuse. And just because you have the right to free speech to say what you want to say, doesn't mean other people have to be subjected to that. There is a time and a place for certain things to be used, and Rainbow Six Siege is not the place to be putting out abusive terms, racist terms, sexist terms, what have you, to other people. Again, I do think the system can be a little harsh. You know, I think every so often people do swear, people say things out of anger, out of annoyance. And, you know, I do think maybe some of the words could be toned down just a little bit within the system. It could do with a little bit of fine-tuning here and there. But overall, in itself, it works. It does what it says on the tin. It stops people from using these words. Give it a month, give it 2 months, you won't see people using those words because they're just like, well, I'll get banned for it, so what's the point in me saying that? And again, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't make sense to me why people are trying to defend their right to be abusive. If you look at other YouTubers, take for example Macy J, he just turns his chat off when he plays because he's aware you don't need it to play Siege. There is no reason why you should think, okay, it's okay for me to be abusive. You know, if you want to be abusive, go and do it somewhere else. Go and do it where, you know, that person has a stand-up chance of defending themselves. And even then, realistically, you shouldn't be doing it, and you know you shouldn't be doing it. And quite frankly, if you're doing it through a game, you're just a bit of a keyboard warrior who doesn't have the balls to do it to someone in person, which again is just wrong. It's this ridiculous thing where people think, oh, okay, so it's not alright in real life, so I'm going to do it in a game, because that way I can get away with it. And, you know, different games companies are going to start clamping down on this. It's not regular that abuse should be okay. Again, Ubisoft have taken a more hard stance on it than other games do, but I think, you know, it's not a bad idea. Lead by example. This game is meant to be more of an esports game, it's meant to be a competitive game, and toxic behaviour, abusive behaviour just shouldn't be allowed. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why people think it's okay, and I don't understand how people can defend that. But like I said, this is just my opinion. I think their system's a good one. I think, again, it needs a little bit of fine-tuning, but those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you really think this is a bad system, I would like you to tell me why in the comments below. Don't just hit the dislike button because you don't agree with me. Actually, let me know why you think it's a bad system. Give me a reason why Ubisoft shouldn't implement this, because genuinely, I can't think of a valid reason that doesn't have a good argument against it as to why this system should be allowed. You know, just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean you should say it, and doesn't mean you should be allowed to say it to other people to abuse them. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I can't see the other side of this argument. People have been telling me things like, oh, you know, well, we should be allowed to communicate because it's a communicative game. You need the ability to make calls. And again, you're perfectly fine to do that. You just don't have to be abusive when you do that. So, you know, realistically, I don't understand the annoyance with this. I think it's just this thing that we have, a stigma, where anyone who turns around and says that's not okay, abuse is not okay, the response is, oh, you're just a social justice warrior. Oh, you're just defending these people because that's what you want to do. You just want to white knight them. And realistically, I don't understand what's so bad about that. Why should we allow people to be abusive? Why should we have to deal with this in games when we don't let it happen in real life? It just bewilders me. So like I said, if you agree with me, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you don't agree with me, please feel free to put it in the comments below. I will happily discuss it with you. And quite frankly, if you think this is a problem, maybe you've noticed this entire video I have used gameplay from the original trailer of Rainbow Six Siege. If you want something to complain about the downgrades from the graphics that we had at E3 to how it is now. That's a valid thing to complain about. That's downgrading. Talking about the fact that you can no longer abuse people is just a stupid thing to try and argue. But again, feel free to let me know. I will more than happily discuss it with you. As long as you remain civil, I will happily have that discussion with you. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this Return to Siege video. I am going to be trying to make a few more videos. I've got a few funny moments compilation videos I'm going to be pulling together for the next few days. So hopefully I'll try and put those out for you. For anyone that's interested, I do have a new merch site that I've launched. I will put a link to that in the description below. Also, you can feel free to follow me on Twitter. I am terrible at posting on there, but feel free to follow. I'm trying to get a little bit better. I am also looking to try and get back into streaming at some point once my work kind of dies down. But other than that, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, a like is always appreciated. If you didn't, the dislike button is just there. Subscribe for more Siege content coming soon, and I'll see you in the next one.